Okay, welcome back, everybody. February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. We are gathered together again to talk about the two items that you see up on the screen. We're going to review really briefly the final town meeting articles that the planning board submitted to the town manager's office late last month. And you can see those there, Article 34, 35, and 36. And then we just want to go over the roadmap because what we want to try to do is give our consultants, Richie and Mitchell, some direction on where we'd like to head for November. So that's the quick summary of what we want to talk about today. The three articles that the planning board is bringing forward for April, as we all know, include reformatting the definitions. Again, going back to that list, working with Maura, we were both able to basically condense it all into one article. So it's a 3-action type thing, but it'll be one article that cleans up the definitions and brings it back to that alphabetized format. We're all familiar with the Senior Care Retirement District amendment. So just to summarize for folks who may want to watch this meeting afterward, it will expand the Senior Care Retirement District, which is the only district located in town, which is up at Route 28 and 151. It'll expand that from the current size of roughly 7 acres to 32 acres, and it will introduce a new use, workforce housing community via special permit through the planning board. So we're all very familiar with that. There weren't many changes that the planning board made. There were some slight tweaks that we had talked about at the last meeting. And so that article went through fairly unchanged from where we left it. And then the third article is the conversion of a dwelling. Now, there was some discussion about this article and the potential of it being tabled until November, but the planning board felt that they should bring it forward. There was one change that they had made to some of the language that we had talked about as a group, and that related to the requirement that the conversion, or at least one of the conversion units, be owner occupied. So they suggested deleting that clause, and the remainder of it remains unchanged from where we had left it. So essentially it changes the date from January 1st, 1980 to January 1st, 2000. It adds in a requirement that the rental units that come from the conversion be rented for no more or no less than a year-long period. And it also creates some consistent language in each one of the zoning districts in which it's allowed. So minor changes, but I thought the change to the rental period was a good one because there was some concern, as you know, about short-term rentals. So with that very quick summary, if there's any questions, please, either raise your hand, shout out, whichever.
So Jed, I think I have a quick question. So with the conversions, though, you could convert to, say, just 2 units, correct? And
Yes,
they could both be separately sold, like as condos. So there's no rental requirement.
that's correct.
So I guess the only question I have is obviously where this is a conversion. It seems a little strange that we have this, we have accessory apartments that are available, yet we're still sort of holding on to one structure on a lot, like within a single family district.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering if we're going to sort of run into crosshairs there where that's the rule, except that there are exceptions so that it's maybe not specifically the rule.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think we need to take a close look at that language. I believe it's in the minimum lot size, although I can't remember exactly where that one dwelling per lot exists, but it is in Article 11, I believe. And we may want to take a hard look at refining that language to make sure that it doesn't create a problem that you just described.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure there's language in there currently that says, with the exception of accessory apartments, I think. So I think it allows, that leniency. But then the question is, well, if you're allowing the conversion, isn't that a dwelling unit? And does it say dwelling or does it say dwelling unit? So I think we just need to spend more time on the details.
Okie doke.
Cool. Any other questions about those town meeting articles?
Jed, is there a red line version of, that shows the changes post this committee's review that were implemented at the planning board hearings or as a product of them?
Yeah, so it's funny you ask because I've been working to get all of that posted up on the website this morning. So I'm not quite there yet, but once they are posted, I'll send everyone a link to it because we
All
had
right,
some old versions up there. So we're just taking care of that today.
awesome.
Okay, so with that said, let's move on to how do we want to move forward? So I'm sure everyone's familiar with this document. We sort of keep a running list of all the items that came from the initial recodification effort. We're calling this, our phase two. And as you can see, in spring 24, we've, got the items that we're bringing forward here, with the exception of the corrections and errors and omissions. We plan to do that again in November because we again have another list of, in an area of 10 items that we need to just fix for November. But considering the conversation that we had about Mr. Cod, we felt that it would be important to have that come forward in November, understanding that it's likely going to create a decent amount of work for this working group. We'd also like to bring forward Article 10 because that's been, our Bob Ritchie has put that together for us, and so we really should start talking about that draft. They, being Mitchell and Ritchie, have also put together agricultural regulations for us to consider. Our understanding is earth moving is not necessarily a heavy lift for them, and so they were thinking November on that as well. And as you can see, our infamous home occupation, which is right at the very end of review, we were hoping to be able to bring that forward. So my plan for today is to discuss this with the group and see, are there other items or do we think this is being a bit too aggressive? Just sort of get some feedback so that we can give our consultants some direction.
Jed, I think I would add to that, we're not absolutely assured that town meeting will pass anything for spring. They might vote something down. And perhaps we should just add to the fall town meeting anything that was not approved.
Yep, that's a fair point. We can do that. I should note that, the idea here, as we moved forward through the second phase, was to, if we have definition changes that we want to be able to bring forward, the idea would be to bring them forward in each one of the town meetings so that we don't have to take that on as a standalone item. So that's in there as sort of a placeholder, just in case we have definitions that we want to tweak along the way. But Pat, you make a good point. If something, falls down here, we may want to consider, adding it back to the list.
I've got another question too with Mr. Cod. Do you think that there will be a lot of changes, or unless I'm remembering wrong with the discussion with our board, it was that there was a lack of understanding that you choose either the underlying or the overlay district. So if you choose the overlay district, you do not have to meet the specific requirements of the underlying zoning. But if you choose the underlying zoning, you do not get the benefits of the overlay district. Do I remember that correctly or not?
Yeah, I think in sort of loose terms, yes, there's definitely confusion about how the overlay district works. There's also issue with, the potential impact that the district might have on our infrastructure. So there's a lot to talk about with Mr. Cod. And so we're
Yeah.
hoping to be able to sort of just start from scratch, not necessarily redo the whole thing, but just start from scratch and think thoroughly about how we want to move any amendments forward.
Okay, and that being the case, we may be too ambitious if because the non-conforming uses is a big bite.
It is.
That's given us problems. Mr. Cod looks like it could be a big bite again. So I don't know how difficult the others are. I wonder if there could be perhaps a general understanding that as things are listed, if it's too much for that town meeting, they slide to the next.
Yes, that's always the understanding.
Okay.
So all we're trying to do is just give our consultants a list of homework assignments, if you will. And as they get closer and they're not ready, you're absolutely right. We just push them on to the next town meeting. I know that parking, go ahead, sorry.
As part of the Mr. Cod discussion, it was the issue of a special permit and who is going to have that authority for Mr. Cod when it's applied. Right now, we have an instance where that is part of the confusion. So I think the special permitting issue ought to be highlighted here so that the others on this group understand that.
Right. So yeah, like I said, I think it's a sizable discussion about how we want to handle Mr. Cod, especially considering the interpretation of it currently.
Right.
But it's an important one because what we see is a lot of people who are interested in the overlay district. And so I think it's more important that we focus on that in particular than things like agriculture or earth moving, because there's so many people who are kicking the tires, if you will, on Mr. Cod.
No, I think the order in which these are stated, putting the if needed thing, but Mr. Cod and Article 10 at the top of the list, and assuming that we'll always put the ones we think that are the most important at that time and most time consuming at the top, just so we can keep track of that.
Good.
Yeah, I would think that the home occupation, I mean, I think we were like 95% set with that. I think there was just some language clarification that was needed for some minor piece there, but I think primarily that was ready, so that shouldn't be a problem. I am wondering though, with the non-conforming uses, structures, lots as a match with dimensional standards. I mean, we most typically look at those as part of a greater whole.
Okay.
But I don't know, what you're proposing for changes as far as dimensional standards go, or are you just looking to refine?
Yeah, I don't recall what the issue was with dimensional standards. We can certainly look back at that first phase to figure out what they flagged, the consultants flagged as issues.
Okay.
But we can
Because
make
I
note.
think, right, I think for the zoning board, just putting it out there, there's some lack of understanding or clarity as far as, for example, a setback. Are you measuring to the facade of the house? Are you measuring to the closest point? Are you measuring to a roof overhang? I think there's some more discrete clarity that you're missing there. And it should be something that would be important to people where you have 10-foot side yard setbacks. So if people have, the house facade is at 10 feet, but somebody has a landing and then stairs, those could go to the lot line, right?
I see what you mean.
So that's some of what we struggle with, I think, on a regular basis.
Okay. Yeah, and quite honestly, agricultural and earth moving, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't really come
Not
up with
had
any.
much of anything, no.
Right, right.
I'd be perfectly happy to have those be delayed, but
Yeah, I think they were just low hanging fruit for them, and so they, jumped on them. So
Yep.
there could be some moving around here. Okay. Anything else for the group? Because this is the only topic for today, so I wanted to keep it as brief as we could. Touch base, see if anyone has any issues, and then we can work on homework assignments. Because what I plan to do is put together sort of things that we identify in the home occupation bylaw as issues that we want the group to think about for the next meeting. One of those items, as an example, is the definition itself, right? So there was a proposed definition, and does that have an impact to the rest of the bylaw? But then obviously in Mr. Cod, same kind of thing. What are we struggling with Mr. Cod so that we can identify that and speak to those particular items in our meeting. So we'll be working hard and putting all that together. Sounds like there's consensus, which is great. Love that.
Okay.
What I plan to do for the next meeting would be to try and hold it in March. I would prefer later March because that gives us a little bit more time to do the homework I was just talking about. So looking at the calendar, I see March 20th and March 27th. Does anyone have any conflicts on March 20th?
No.
Would that be-
we have land use scheduled for the 20th, so I guess you would just need to make sure that if you pick that date, we're out of that meeting in time for this.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we do a 12 o'clock meeting for this if we do the 20th. If we do the 27th, we can keep it at 11.
Oh, so you're providing lunch then, Jen?
We are. It's a virtual lunch.
Oh, wait. Really
The
good,
best-
really good looking gourmet food, right?
You can watch me eat it. Yeah.
Oh, God.
And I'd go
Yeah.
for the 27th. I like the 11 o'clock start.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too.
I do 3.
It's fine by me.
Sounds like we have our date. March
Okay,
27th, 11 o'clock. Pencil that in, and we'll send
Okay.
around a calendar invite.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, bye, everybody.
You too.
Wow,
Bye-bye.
very efficient meeting, Jed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.